Good afternoon. In this lecture we're going to be going through the requirements for the accounts receivable project in the advanced auditing class, and the software that you see here is the IDEA software. You have access to the IDEA software if you go into the Computer Lab 0104, and you're going to access this software by identifying the program. So if you want to go to programs, you will see the IDEA. Once you have this, what you're going to see is you're going to see the IDEA software that looks like this, and we'll come back to this in just a minute. The other piece that we need to do is we need to go into our Blackboard account. Now I recommend that you go into the Blackboard account using the Google Chrome, and the reason I say this is it's easier to access one of the text files that we have. In Google Chrome, in our Blackboard account for Advanced Auditing 7556 is what you will see is you'll see a folder that is IDEA Workbook and Files. You click that, and what you're going to see is two specific files. The first file is an access file. Simply by clicking this will download to your download files. The other file is a text file. Now something interesting takes place in the text file, which is why I want you to open up the Blackboard account using Google Chrome. When we click this account, or this file, the file actually shows up as a web page. And what you notice is we have names, we have account numbers, addresses, and then the credit limit. We're going to be working with this file in a few minutes, but at this point what I want you to do is I want you to save this file. So to save this file in Google Chrome is you simply right click and we want to save as. It's going to save as a customer, and we simply save this, and we have the file saved under our download file. So now let's go back to the IDEA project. The first thing that we want to do is we want to create a project. To create a project is, you notice that we are in the Home tab. We go to Create. So to create a project, we click the Create button, and we're going to manage the project, and using the Manage Project tab, and call this AR project, or whatever you want to call it. It really makes no difference. And what we see here is at this point we have no files. So what we want to do at this point is download our initial file, and the initial file is going to be the desktop file, or excuse me, is going to be the accounts receivable file, which is the access. To gain access to this is we click desktop, and you notice the instructions here is to convert data from a variety of file formats. So we click this, and since we know that this is an access file, we click access. Now the next piece of this is we need to identify where the file is. The file structure right now doesn't take us to the file. So right next to the file name, you will see these 4 dots. If you click this, what we want to do is we want to go to our download. So in room 104, the thing to keep in mind is that the download is going to be in your directory. So at that point what you need to do is you need to go to desktop, go to your directory, and then to download. Since I'm working from my own PC, I'm simply going to go to the download and collect my file. So we're going to collect this, and we are going to go to next. And at this point we are going to upload the file. So uploading the file, essentially what this is giving us is the file, and what we see here is there are 300 records. These 300 records include the account number, the invoice number, the type, we're not interested in that. We are interested in the gross amount. These next 2 columns are related to taxes. We're not interested in that. We have a paid flag. We'll explain that in a minute. The date becomes important, and we'll explain that in a minute. And then these other columns, we're really not interested at this point. But there's a little bit of history related to this file that we need to understand. And to explain the history, what I'd like you to do is to go to Data, and we're going to sort the data. And we're going to sort the data based upon the date. And we're going to do this descending. And we do this, and what we see is that there's actually a transaction that was completed on 4/1. What we're actually interested in is everything up through 3/31/2015. Now you notice there were some items that had a paid flag. What this means is that while the file was generated on 4/1, evidently there were some invoices that were actually paid on April 1st. Well, if they're paid, we're not interested in these as being money that's due us in accounts receivable. So what we need to do is we need to create a criteria where we are eliminating the date of 4/1. So we're only looking at things older than 4/1. And then we want to eliminate the items that have been paid. So we want to eliminate the items that have a paid flag. So at this point, what I'd like for you to do is to go to Properties, and I want you to click Criteria. In the criteria is what you're going to see is a dialog box here. And this dialog box is we want to create a criteria where that the date is less than April 1st, 2015, and we do not have a paid flag. Now you notice here on the bottom, as we scroll through this, is that it has every field, and it identifies the types of fields that we're actually looking at. So as an example, the paid flag is a character, so it's an alphanumeric character. The gross amount is numeric, and then the paid item, the paid date, or the date, the transaction date is listed as a date. So we need to keep that in mind as we're creating this dialog. So the first thing you want to do is we double click date. And you notice that date comes up here. We want to include items that are less than the date of April 15th, 2015. So we have the calendar here. We can bring this up, and we can go to 2015. We go to April and April 1st. Okay? Now, what you also may notice is that the date is in parentheses, and we have the year 2015, the month 04, and the date 01. So what this criteria does is it creates a criteria where that everything less than or older than April 1st, 2015 is captured in the file that we're looking for. But we need this, but we also need to eliminate the items that were paid. So we click AND. Now, you could type in AND, but keep in mind that there's actually a period before and after AND. So the next criteria is and we want to click the paid flag. So again, and paid flag, and in this case we want it to be not equal to P. Now, since P is a character, we want to put the P in quotation marks. So you notice the quotation marks is here, and we want to put a capital P here. The reason that we want to do this is because this is sensitive to case, and the P's indicating that it's paid is a capital P. So this is what we have, is we want everything where the date is less than 2015, April 1st, and the paid flag is not equal to P. We click to validate. So you notice the validate, this validates. This is actually a very good practice because in A much more complicated equation is it's very easy to identify errors this way. So this is a real easy step to make sure that the equation is valid. So we hit OK here, and then we create the validate and exit. Okay, so you notice the criteria is here, and we now have criteria where that we've eliminated these items. We want to, at this point, is want to save this as a separate file. So we go back to home, and we want to save this as, we'll say, AR sorted. Or you can, again, you can call it anything that you like. We hit OK, and what you notice here is this AR file is actually set up in such a way that it's only captured the items that we're looking for. So we're not looking for the paid items, and we're not looking for the items, the one item that was generated after the end of the month in April 1st. So we should have a file that has 253 records. So you notice the criteria is no longer there because we've actually, again, saved this as everything that's left over after the criteria. The next thing that we want to do is we want to create the first file that we want to work with specifically related to our accounts receivable aging balance. Now what we're going to do is we're going to age this based upon the invoice number, because it's the invoice number that actually has the dates on it. So to age a report, we go to Analysis, and what we're looking for in the analysis is we're looking for an aging. So if we click Aging at this point, is we are now going to age. We're going to age based upon the date, and we're going to accumulate the fields based upon the gross amount. But what we need to do is we need to identify the date that essentially is the beginning. And the beginning point is going to be the March 31st, 2015. So we can go over here, we can again use the calendar, we can actually just type this in. Either way works just fine, but essentially we're looking for aging as of 2015, March 31st, which is the last day. We click OK. And what we're going to see here is we're going to see the first table that becomes of interest to us. And what this is saying is that we are aging based upon 0 to 30 days, 30 to 60 days, we have 151 records, 60 to 90 days, 75 records, 90 days, 13, and so forth. Now, as an auditor, what we're interested in related to this is the actual aging. Now, the other point that I'm going to point out is that what we have is that we have the net value and the percentages based upon the net value. As an auditor, what you're interested in is what this data actually tells us. So what this tells us is that during the first 30 days past due, or actually is not due, but up to 30 days, is we actually have a negative net balance. And what we see here is the debits essentially is what's owed to us. The credits are the credits that are given to customers. Well, the interesting thing is here that we actually do have credits that are $36,000. Our debits are $406,000, so our net value of the accounts receivable is $369,000. Now, the great thing about this from an audit tool is if we're looking for, as an example, we're looking for this item that's 150 days past due, we simply just click this and we can display the record. So we can identify the item. In this case, this is an item that is due as of 11, or the transaction date was 11/4/2014. What does this information tell us? Well, as we are auditing the accounts receivable, this is the information that is going to be valuable to us as we are attempting to consider the legitimacy of the days outstanding, as well as the legitimacy specifically related to the allowance for doubtful account. So we want to capture this in an Excel file. What I found is that the easiest way to do this is simply just highlight. So in other words, what we're doing is we are highlighting, we're putting our left cursor down. If you go Control C, go into your Excel file, and we Control V. This has our information here, with the exception of the headings. Okay, so this is the aging. This is the number of transactions. This is the percentages. We go over here, and this is the amount. And these are the debits. This is the percentages. This is the amount. And this is the debit, or the credit. And then we have the totals. So if we simply just so again, we have the number of transactions, and over here is we have the total number of transactions. I'm going to convert this into dollars, and convert obviously these amounts into dollars, and our totals into dollars. We also are interested in just putting in here our accounts receivable, aging. Okay, so we've done our first table. Now, for your purposes, what you want to do is you want to write a very quick dialogue, 2 or 3 sentences, simply just with the merge cell here is talk about what the issues are. So this is the aging report. This is the information that's going to be of value in relationship to determining our allowance for doubtful account. And what are your concerns? Well, the concerns are that we do have a substantial amount of credit balances, and in fact the 0 to 30-day balance is actually a credit balance. What does that mean? Well, we don't know as an auditor, but essentially what we're looking at is we're looking at this from a preliminary perspective of what's actually taking place. Okay, so let's go back to the file, and we can close this. And let me just point one other thing out related to this. If you go back to data, the data is here, and so we're back to the data. You notice that the AR sorted is actually here. I am actually going to close these other 2 files, and we have our preliminary file, or primary file, related to accounts receivable in terms of transactions, and this is our AR sorted file. The next thing that we want to do is we want to look at this from the perspective of account balances. So we have the account numbers here, and invoices and gross amount. But what we want to do is we want to sort this or summarize this based upon account number. The way we do this is we go to Analysis, we go to Summary, and in this case what we're doing is we are summarizing based upon account number. There's no other summarization that we need, and the only thing we really are interested in is going to be the gross amount, and we're looking for a sum related to this gross amount as opposed to averages or anything else. Okay. We then hit OK, and we have a summarization report here, and what you notice is that we have 51 accounts, and the accounts, in this case, this account has 9 transactions, and the gross amount that is due is $7,091.08. Okay, so we're just going to set this here for a minute, and now what we want to do is we want to download, or actually upload, the file specifically related to our account names and credit balances. And what we're going to do is we're going to relate these two tables. So let's go back to home, and we're going to collect the customer file, and this customer file is under desktop. So we click desktop, and we know it's a text file, but the function of this text file is what we call a print report. Adobe works just the same, but essentially what this is this is a print report that has a summary line by line of each account, then it goes to a summary line by line to the next account, and what we're attempting to do is to capture data from this so that we can create a file that looks very similar to the files that you might see in Excel or Access. So we are clicking the print report, and again, it's not lined up where we're going to find the file in this tree here, so we need to find the file. So we're going to click the little box with the buttons in it to the side, and again, it's going to be in the same download file here. And I have a number of files, but the only thing that you're interested in is the customer file. We click customer text, and we hit next. Okay, let's open this up and take a look at this. So you notice, and again, this is what we call a principal file, is that there's headings, there's account number, names, addresses. In this case, we're not really interested in addresses. If you go down here, you'll see that there's page breaks that include a summary again of the account name, address, and so forth. But what we're interested in is the account number, so that we can relate it to the table that we have. We're interested in the name, and then we're interested in the credit limit. So let's go back over here to the top and see how we're going to do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a file based upon this information. So the first thing that you want to do is to identify the line of data. So put your cursor next to A001, click your cursor, left cursor down, and just scroll it over at ½ an inch or so. And what you notice is that this line highlights. And we are creating a standard layer. You can create a more complex layer than this so that it'll capture the other information in the subsequent lines. But we're really only interested in some very easy information. Okay, so we click yes. Now, what you see here is that this line is now encased in this block, this yellow block. Now we're going to be working with this to actually create a data file. And how do we do this? Well, what we're trying to do is trying to capture lines with specific information. And the information that we're capturing is, you notice uniquely, is that every account starts with a letter and then there's 3 numbers. Okay, so let me explain it this way, is you want to put your cursor above the A. And what we have over here is we have text traps, numeric traps, space traps, and non-blank. So let me just share with you what we're going to do first. We're going to click the text trap, and the text trap is doing this. It's looking for every line that has a letter in the space. So you notice that we are capturing the accounts, but we're also capturing this information in terms of the header. Well, we're not interested in that. So the next trap is going to be numeric. So we click numeric 3 times, and what you see is that the only thing that is highlighted are the actual accounts that we're interested in. Okay, so that's very good. Now what we want to do is we want to create a table that has the account number, the names, and the credit limit. So we're going to do it this way. Is in the box here is we're going to highlight just the 4 digits. Very important that we're just highlighting the 4 digits. And then we release. And what is this saying over on the right? As you notice that the type is a character. It's a character because it's alphanumeric. And the name, it's picking up the name as the first number. Well, we're not interested in that. So we have to go back over here, and we're going to call this account number. Okay? So we're done with that. So we've captured the numbers. Now let's say we make a mistake and we do this. Okay, so we have the box here. This is not what we're interested in. Essentially, is all we do is we right click and we remove. So if you do make a mistake here, it's not going to be a problem. Now the name we want to pick up, and you notice that some of the names are a little bit longer than the first name here. So when we capture this, is we want to go a few more digits. Doesn't really matter how many you go, but essentially what we're looking at here is it is a character, and the width is 22 spaces. It's offset 23 spaces. In other words, if you count 23 spaces, that's the first space that we're looking at, and the name is Dan Aykroyd. We're not interested in Dan Aykroyd as the header. We're going to call this account name. Okay, so we have account name that looks right here. We're not interested in the address. The only other thing that we are interested in is the credit limit. So we're going to highlight the credit limit, again, to 20,000. And the one caution, and it's not an issue here, but when we highlight it this way is we're assuming that there's no more than 5 digits, which is a fairly good assumption with our data, but if you're working with larger data sets, is sometimes the first couple of numbers may not be reflective of the total digits that are being used. Okay, now you notice that since this is a numeric item, is that the type of this data is numeric. You also notice that it's offset 97. The actual width is 5 digits, and again, we want to click the name and call this credit limit. Okay. So we've now created the table. What we want to do at this point is we want to save it and then move it over to the file that we're working with in IDEA. So how do we do this? Well, this box right here, you notice it says Save Layer. We click this, and we have now saved the layer. And you scroll this, you notice that it's only picking up the information that we're looking at. Okay. We want to save the template. So we just click this and Save Template. Again, click Save Template here. And then ultimately we want to import report into IDEA. Proceed with import. And we're going to call this customer listing. Finish. And we see here. Okay. So let's just make sure that we understand the 2 files that we're interested in. We're interested in the customer listing. Customer listing should have 87 customers in it. We're also looking at the summarization. The summarization is the account balances. Over here, the summarization is the account numbers, number of transactions, and the gross amount. The sorted accounts receivable that includes based upon invoice number, we're not interested in that, so you can close that up. So we have 2 files. We have the summarization report that has account number, number of items, the gross amount, and then we have our customer listing. The summarization has 51 records, and the customer listing has 87 records. Now what we want to do is we want to create a relationship based upon the account number with these 2 files. Our primary file is going to be summarization. So I want you to have the summarization highlight it and delete here. And now what we're going to do is we are going to relate these tables, connect these tables. So if we go to analysis and the visual connector. So you notice that the summarization table is our primary data file. The customer listing that we have showing is our next file. We're going to click the customer listing, and now what we're going to do is we're going to relate these two tables. We relate these two tables by highlighting the account number in the summarization in our primary data file. We hold down the left click and we move this over to the account number. So we are relating based upon account number. We let loose and we see that the account number, the primary table, has a blackened dot, and the secondary table has a white dot. For some reason this poses a problem for students. If it ever does, simply just right click, remove the connector, and try again. Okay, so we're good to go. Okay, now pay very close attention to the next step. Is we're going to hit OK. And the next question becomes, are we only looking for matches, or are we looking for all records in the primary data and all matches? Well, this is what we're looking for here, is all records in the primary data file, in other words, of the account transactions, and all matches. Okay, and this is what we're looking at here. So what we have in this visual connector is we have all 51 records, but what you also notice is that some of these transactions don't have a name. Well, we're going to address that in a few minutes and go from there. Okay, now to make this a little bit easier to work through, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to move the account name next to the account number. It's very easy. Simply just highlight account name, and you highlight, you notice when you hover over the heading is that it's a darkened arrow. But once we highlight this over, left click, hold down, and then scroll over. Very easy to do. Not an issue at all. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is want to take a look at some of the data elements that I think may in fact be problematic. So one of the things that we are interested in is accounts that have credit balances. So that's actually an easy criteria. So if we click criteria and we look at the gross amount, and we look at gross amount is less than 0. Okay, gross amount is numeric, so the 0, we do not have parentheses around it. Just to confirm, we hit validate, equation is valid, and we hit validate and exit. Okay, so we now have accounts that have negative balances. Well, what does this mean? Well, frankly, we don't necessarily know what this means, but as an auditor, this is something that we need to explore and identify. Keep in mind that credit balances in some industries are a significant problem. And with credit balances, what does that mean? Well, it's very possible that this means that you have a liability because in fact you owe money to these accounts or to these customers. So this is an issue. So again, what we want to do is we want to highlight, and this is going to be one of our tables, and Control C, go into our Excel account, go to the next report, and the next report is what we're going to say is we're going to call this credit balances. And bring this over here. Okay. Now, make these dollar signs, have a total here, and you want to make this table nice and neat. You want to call this account number, name, etc., etc. Okay. And then the dialog again, the dialogue, you want to click this and this, is you want to talk about this. Well, we have what looks like 5 accounts. The 5 accounts have credit balances. We want to explore why we have credit balances. Are these legitimate credit balances? And if they are, do these represent liabilities that are unreported that in fact we need to make mention of when we're doing our test for liabilities towards the end of the audit? Very important in regards to looking at credit balances, because the implications may be some problems specifically related to internal controls, but it also may relate to problems that essentially mean that we have a liability. Okay, so let's go back to our account. In the idea, back to our file, we want to eliminate the criteria. So we click the criteria button, and you notice the button here that says clear. Click clear, hit OK, and all of our accounts show up. Okay, now something else that would be very interesting is to identify the top accounts. Identifying the top accounts means that these are the accounts that as an auditor we are interested in exploring in greater depth. So if we go to top records, and the number of top records that we're interested in is going to be 10, and it's going to be top records based upon the gross amount, and we hit OK, and what we see here is that we have a number of top records. Okay, again, Control C, take this over to your Excel file, and you notice how that I'm pasting one line below, because what you want to do is you want to put in the titles here. So the titles are going to go on top. Again, it's up to you to make this page nice and pretty, and looking like a professional auditor would be working with this. The sum here. So we got, so the top 10 records represent $204 in regards to the total balance. And what's our total balance for accounts receivable? $369,000. So is it important that a significant amount of customers are embedded in these top accounts? Well, possibly. We have 2 more files that I'm interested in you looking at. So let's go back to IDEA, and let's go back to the BizCon file. And the BizCon file, again, is the account number, the account name, the number of records, gross amount, and the credit limit. Now you notice here that some of these account numbers don't have names. Well, that's a problem, and that, frankly, when we're looking through these records here, one of the significant issues is, do we have names related to accounts? Well, it clearly sees that we don't. So what does this mean? Does this mean that the organization is selling to customers that have not been vetted? So as an example, account number F123 owes us $3,445. Well, who is that account? And who sold them that amount of money? Evidently, there were 7 transactions. So there are 7 sales to an account with no name. The management of accounts receivable specifically related to AR management and the names and the customer files, and the ability to actually sell only to valid customers is a significant control function within accounts receivable. And the fact that these are being sold to is, I see, very problematic. So how are we going to identify those accounts with no names? We go to criteria, and we go to account name, and in this case what we're looking for is account names that are equal to blank. Well, account name is a character, and if we're looking for blanks, is we simply put the quotation marks with nothing in the middle. We hit valid, equation is valid, we hit OK, And what we have here is we have essentially 14 records with certainly a number of transactions where we're selling to people that we don't know who they are. Again, as an auditor, I think we would all be certainly concerned about this, and we'd be concerned what we are actually doing to manage the internal controls related to this. So we highlight, we go Control C, we go to our Excel file, we then create a new table, and we put this in here. And again, this number here is number of transactions. So 55 transactions, and this number over here is the what is due to us. And again, what is due to us is what is due to us based upon accounts that don't have names. Okay, so again, you want to put the titles here. In the dialogue, you're going to, in 3 or 4 sentences, explain what the issues are, what the control weaknesses are, and recommendations that you have as an auditor in terms of very specific testing related to this. Okay, the last piece of this is going to be specifically related to identifying accounts that are greater than the credit limit. Now, you notice one of the things that in this file here that you see is account names, there is no name, which means that there's no credit limit. So we want to eliminate those. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to criteria and make a specific change in this. So instead of equal to, we're going to say not equal to blank, and then put our cursor over here, and the gross amount is greater than the credit limit. Okay, so what are we saying here? So we're only interested in accounts with names, because we already addressed the accounts with no names. And we're looking for the gross amount that's greater than the credit limit. We hit OK, and we exit. So what we have is we have 2 accounts, GI rate, where the gross amount is $30,000, credit limit is $20,000, worldwide weight, gross amount is $45,000, and the credit limit is $20,000. Well, those credit limits should mean something to the organization. Again, I'm just copying. I'm going to my Excel file and putting this over here and pasting. And what you see in this case is, again, the account number, name, number of transactions, what is owed to us, and the actual credit limit. So I think as an auditor, as you are assessing this in terms of your work papers, and essentially you're just putting this here, is what you want to explain is the fact that number 1 is these accounts are over their credit limit. What you're recommending in terms of additional testing is what controls were broken to allow this to happen. Was there management override? Was there something else? At this point, you don't know the answer to that, but essentially what we're doing related to this data file is putting together the information in such a way that the auditors can now use this information in terms of additional testing. Visualize the fact that what we're doing related to analyzing this file is stuff that we would be doing, or testing that we would be doing in the preliminary stage of the audit, and what we're looking for are risks. So again, this is transactions, of these are sales greater than credit limit. Okay, this is accounts with no names. And then we've already identified this. So you're going to end up with 5 separate tables. And what you're interested in terms of your report is using this information in terms of a assessment from at the preliminary stage of the audit in terms of recommendations that you as an auditor will conclude during the course of the audit. We don't know what the answers are. We don't know why As an example, why the credit sales is greater than the credit limit. We don't know why these accounts were sold with no names. We don't know why there's credit limits or there's credit balances, but as all we know is these are the things that we need to explore as we are continuing our audit. So I hope this presentation actually gives you a very concise methodology in terms of this project. And if you do have any questions, let me know. Thank you very much.